Hey, here we are. It's another part for the Persona 5 playthrough. And today we've got some more Mementos. Because I actually did figure that I need to show at least one section of Mementos to give people an idea of what kind of pacing to expect from this goddamn subway dungeon. The thing about Mementos, though, is that it gets very monotonous very quickly, and while you're playing the game, it is entertaining to go through. However, not so fun to watch. And there's basically no value in showing it because nothing is ever going to be in the same place.
And we're not going to be fighting anything new.
Yeah. So, I'm going to show this first section of Mementos for this part, and then on all future Mementos visits, I will fade straight past clearing the floors and fighting all the monsters, and I will jump straight to the side quest sub-bosses, any treasure chests that I find particularly noteworthy, and cutscenes that happen, discussions in the rest areas, that kind of thing. I'll skip straight to the stuff that matters and avoid the procedurally generated crap. Mishima is my spirit animal, because I know exactly what he's talking about when it comes to the kind of time-consuming bullshit that happens when you try to actively moderate a comment section. And that's basically why I don't actively do that quite as much as I probably should. There are two things that really get me when it comes to our own YouTube comment section, and they might not be the things that you expect. Yes, there are trolls and assholes that pop up in the comment section most of the time, but the real thing that trips me up is the auto spam detector, which detects actual spam maybe 1 in 100 times. For the most part, it's just actual legitimate comments. And, we have 2,000 videos. Or more. Maybe it's 3,000, 2,500, something like that.
I think we're closer to 3,000 than 2,000 at this point.
Yeah, and people are commenting on all those videos in slow trickles. Really slow trickles when you go by individual videos, but it adds up. So there's a lot of comments every day. A lot of them wind up getting caught by the spam filter for one reason or another. And that shit is impossible to sort through in any sort of timely fashion. And it's not like we can hire anyone else to do this. We don't have the funds for such a convenience. So, occasionally, I'll go into the auto spam filter in the Creator Studio, and I can maybe get through 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages of comments, and by that point I lose my patience because there's so many of the goddamn things, there's no way to dent them. By the time I get back to it, the same number of comments that I just removed from the spam filter have piled up. So the number never changes. It's like the buffet from 2 parts ago. The more, it doesn't matter how much you dig in, the amount stays the same.
Yep. And the more popular you get, the bigger that number grows.
There are thousands of comments from years ago that have never seen the light of day because the auto spam filter caught them, and I will never have time to get around to approving them.
My policy towards comments is with the first day, I will pay attention to the comments of a video. I get rid of firsts and comments that don't really say anything, I don't know why. I hate firsts. I don't know why people say it, but I'm getting rid of it, and I don't care.
People are stupid, so.
And then at the end, I'll wait 24 hours. What happens is I'll look at a comment section of my last video before I upload the next video. And I might unremove some spam comments, or I'll just look through it and, okay, I'm done. I'm never going to look at the comments of that video ever again.
Yeah, sometimes I do that, like for a particular video that I don't have as much personal investment in, like maybe a game that someone else played for the channel, or one of the ones that I'm not particularly a fan of, like a game that I've never played, because I don't get the feeling that I would know enough to really make the most of those comments in the first place.
Yeah, I tend to focus more on ones I'm either recording myself or particularly more heavily active in.
Yeah.
Not that's a blight against videos I'm not as talkative in. It's more that the comments would be more about other people in that sense, so I would have less to deal with.
Yeah, there's not enough hours in the day to read every comment that we ever get, and that's unfortunate. That really is.
And the more popular you get, the more comments you do get. And I don't have time to read all of these. I don't have time to look at every single video again and again to police it or to read what new people are saying. Like, I uploaded a playthrough of Sonic Unleashed, I don't know, 2 years ago. I'm sure people are throwing all kinds of new comments on it right now. Sorry, I'm not reading it. I don't know what you're saying about Sonic Unleashed today as opposed to 2 years ago. But that's just the way it is.
So you're saying is I can say all the mean things about you I would want as long as it's on a video from like a year ago.
Damn right.
Like, I only ever... Like, if I ever respond to a comment that was left on an older video, it's because Providence aligned along with the stars on a particular day to have that comment pop up on the top on the top of the page, the notification tab, while I happened to be browsing YouTube. And that's the only time I ever go back to old videos to read any comments. Anyway, I goofed up 2 parts ago. Remember when I made curry instead of coffee? Turns out I should have made coffee, because I'm short a few points for Sojiro.
Oops.
Yeah, so we're not ranking up with Sojiro today. But he's only got 1 more rank to go before he locks up until August. So it's not really
that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's not really that big a deal. I'll just handle Sojiro at some point when I can't hang out with EY. Anyway, more home shopping. This time we're getting calming masks.
Please buy our tchotchkes.
Why are they calming masks in the context of home shopping for people who aren't Persona users? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I was talking to Sojiro just to check his social link rank. Because if Sojiro was going to rank up, I was going to hang out with him just to clear his rank 4 and, you know, get that out of the way, because I like the sense of completion when I've finished everything that I can do with a particular thing in a game. For the time being, I can put it out of my mind and not think about it and just prioritize other things. But since I can't rank up with him, I'm just gonna go hang out with a Y. Now, I picked up Mandrake from one of the battles in Mementos last part, but really there's no reason to have
Mandrake kind of sucks, so...
Yeah. And, you know, if you have spare personas like that later in the game, you can use them for something, because one of the functions of the Velvet Room that I haven't unlocked at this point in the story is the ability to sacrifice personas to give other personas experience boosts, which is a very useful function and is half the reason that I can keep something like Arsene useful for the entire game. In fact, Arsene, Izanagi, Orpheus, all of them are personas that I hung on to for the majority of the game and just fed other personas to keep their skill sets viable and to just keep them leveled up. Like Amano Uzume is not anything close to level 68 when you get her. I kept her because she's a personal favorite of mine. And I like that about Persona 5 is you can keep your personal favorites around and you can keep them usable. It's not the most efficient way to play the game, but, you know, sometimes you don't care about efficiency, you just want to use a particular persona for a lot of the game. Well, this game lets you do that much more effectively than 3 or 4 did. And Persona 4 Vanilla, or Persona 3 Vanilla as well, if you wanted to do that, you basically had to bend over backwards in order to downfuse which I don't think you can even do in this game. Anyway, yeah, I ditched Mandrake, and now I'm gonna go grab a Hanged Man persona so I can take advantage of it for a wise Confidant. A Hanged Man persona, a good one to use at this point in the game. Which one do I use? Which one do I use? I forget. Huapo! Huapo is another favorite of mine, actually. Because
Hupo, what happened to you?
not Hupo. Huapo. And Huapo is a demon that I'm well familiar with because I think she's one of the ones that you can recruit fairly early on in Nocturne. And she's good for that point in the game. I remember having her in my party for a fair stretch of it.
You'll withdraw this persona?
And I seem to have done a fair bit with Huapo during my previous playthrough because she's at a decent level for that point in the game. And she's got a bunch of different elemental skills that she probably shouldn't have natively, which means I probably fed a bunch of personas to her. One of the most useful things that you can probably have late game is a high level persona with a lot of elemental skills that are low level. And I don't say this ironically, but and the designers of the Persona games know this because they made Naoto that character in Persona 4 Golden, where you have a lot of lower level elemental skills, a lot of different low level elemental skills. That's the trick. You cover a lot of elemental bases with low level skills, and because of the way weaknesses work in this game, if you have low level skills, you can knock enemies down quickly and efficiently with minimal SP use. Not as important for this particular playthrough because I have SP adhesives, but it is a handy thing to have. You do want to keep a low level persona or two around for the plot dungeons. It's a really good way to stretch out your SP use to the absolute limit. Anyway, EY's rank 2 involves you doing one very simple thing.
You press the button.
But you can screw this up to a point. The signal you're waiting for is EY's cough. He coughs, you're supposed to call him to give him an opportunity to get away, and then you hold the phone up and eavesdrop on this guy while he calls someone else. It works beautifully, but you can have Kurisu just be really slow on the uptake, and keep saying, that can't be right, or EY sounds like he's sick. I wonder what's going on there, and just not call him. I think you can do it like 3 or 4 times before the game forces you to call him. I haven't tried doing that, so I don't know what EY's reaction is.
Why stole our spot?
I like the motorcycle in the corner of the diner there, by the way. Anyway.
You know, he just wants to set up a really timely coincidence. It's like, now I'm just imagining him in, like, school outfit just peeking around the corner with a lunchbox going, want to have lunch? Senpai?
EY is playing a fairly clever game here, where he's trying to make this guy think he's poking for a specific kind of favor, but really just using the meeting as an opportunity to arrange an eavesdropping session. The one thing that I'm somewhat confused about is the range on Kurisu's phone. Like, was he expecting to do this? His smartphone can pick up audio from that far away?
Hey, remember, Kurisu can just slide right up to anyone with his ear next to him and eavesdrop, so why can he do the same with his phone? You know, he's just slides up to a person, shoves the phone right in their face, and they don't notice.
Well. Now, I suppose that last motion was Kurisu putting his phone on speaker, because that's the only way I can see this is actually working. Kurisu, why? You know what you were saying just now about sticking his face up to someone and them not noticing?
Someone finally noticed!
You think everyone would notice with that mop of hair, but
So it's just 99% effective.
anyway, one of the other things that I kind of like is that this guy's name is Masa, but Iwai's Yakuza codename was Mune. Masa and Mune.
Ah.
Now I'm thinking of Chrono Trigger.
Oh, Yeah, I know this is the correct answer, but I so wanted to be a smartass and say how's your cold?
Actually, that gets you the equal number of points.
Oh, really? I thought this gave you a bit more.
Again, I
Yeah.
find being a smartass and being kind of a dick with a Y always helps.
Sometimes there are two right answers that you can choose in these social link conversations. But yeah, if you ask how his cold is, he laughs at you, and it amuses him enough to make up for the fact that you're not exactly on the ball.
Rank you up!
Alright.
I haven't progressed far enough in Iwai's Confidant rank to actually know how his Arcana relates to the sequence of events that happens in his plot. When I finished when I finished the game before,
And he's nice enough to comp us for our work. Yay!
yeah, when I finished the game before, I was just before the rank that would have unlocked Iwai's Confidant side quest. Actually, I hadn't.
Alright.
I had unlocked a side quest the day before Christmas Eve. Unfortunately, they don't let you do side quests on Christmas Eve because there's no game left after Christmas Eve. So, that was unfortunate timing.
I like the fact that when you do side quests or when you do the Confidant link with a Y, it raises your proficiency. There's a lot of social links in this game where if you hang out with the reporter, your charm goes up. If you hang out with Sojiro, your kindness goes up. There are you can still do Confidant links, social links, and still upgrade your stats. You don't have to go out of your way to eat at the diner. You don't have to do all these different things. You can actually keep advancing your stats while doing social links.
Yeah, you just don't gain as many points by doing that, so you do want to spend some days going to the diner or to some other social link, some other social stat raising activity. But the thing about going to social links and raising personality stats is that not all ranks do it. Some of them do it pretty consistently, going to Takemi's clinic and ranking up with her will pretty much always get you guts. But,
Oh, she is treating our huge guts.
Sojiro, on the other hand, only gives you kindness at certain ranks. And if you're playing blind, you don't necessarily know when that's going to happen along his Confidant ranks. So, you do want to assume that it's not going to happen and plan around that to boost your kindness independently.
I have a feeling someone's watching me. I haven't seen anyone.
Yeah, well, now she's getting that cliche "someone is watching me" feeling from Yusuke, who has apparently been following her around because he's too chicken to ask her to model for him. Yusuke is great, and we're going to be seeing him very soon. I wasn't expecting to like Yusuke as a character quite as much as I ended up doing, because I assumed he was going to have this a certain kind of personality when I saw him in pre-release stuff. And it was a personality that I'm tired of seeing in characters, so I wasn't looking forward to him showing up. But when I got to the game, his personality turned out to be completely different from what I was expecting. And he's more of a comedy character. So, yeah.
I love the fan site comments. Every time you go to a loading screen, anytime you're in any kind of transition, you're reading what the general public thinks of the Phantom Thieves, and some of these lines are pretty damn funny. And if you're at all curious about seeing more lines and you don't want to wait for a loading screen, there is a menu in the options. If you push pause, there is one of the menus can actually just show you a constant scroll. You'll see some repeated lines after a while, but I like some of the things where it's like, this is like some kind of cult. Change their hearts, get the fuck out of there with that shit.
The only thing that I don't really like about it is that the comments themselves suffer from the syndrome of being written like someone is trying to write something that sounds like an internet comment rather than actually sounding like an internet comment.
I see no difference.
No, there's a certain artificialness to it. It doesn't read like a genuine internet comment. It reads like someone trying to sound like an internet comment. It's a subtle thing.
It's at least better than fake gamer chat at conferences and stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to pwn some noobs.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you read a book and the author doesn't quite have a complete grasp on how to write natural-sounding dialogue. So some of the wording is a bit stiff or unnatural. Just a little bit, enough to give it that uncanny valley feeling. That's what I mean. At this point, I'm not even pretending not to be a Phantom Thief, because why would I bother? There's no fooling Mishima. He's just gonna keep believing it. It's like, if you try to pretend that you're not a Phantom Thief, he always gives you this wink wink nudge nudge response.
Yeah. Sure you're not, Mr. Caruso. Wink. I totally won't help out the Phantom Thieves.
Whoever they might be. In fact, I hear they're hearing this request right now.
Japanese high school day seems to end at around 4:30, apparently. I forget, when does high school usually end around here?
Yeah, I just know in Canada it was always 3:30.
Mine ended around 4.
I always got this feeling from anime that high school in Japan ends later than it does here, because whenever someone is walking home from school in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's always sundown. It's always sundown.
That's also a location thing. Japan's much farther north than you think it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It just sort of depends on the time of day, or the time of the year, I suppose.
Well, that too, yeah.
Yeah. Because there certainly... It always happens during the dead of winter for me, where December, July-ish, the sunset will happen pretty damn early.
Yeah, that's true.
I said December, July. I meant December, January.
Yeah, it could be worse. You could be living in, Scandinavia or something where it gets, 3 hours of darkness. or it's, dark, 18 hours a day or something.
Yeah.
Man, I can't even picture that.
And anytime I was ever in drama club, I'd always come out and it'd be pitch black, so...
That would fuck with your sleeping schedule something harsh, man.
Now, that just reminds me of when I was working at a television broadcast sort of job, and I had overnight, so I would get there at, right at sundown. By the time there was no windows in the place, obviously, because you just couldn't. Meanwhile, when I would get out, the sun's coming up, I'm like, when did this happen?
Ah, man.
How long have I been awake?
I slept too long.
Wait, what is that? Is that the alternate ending to
That's the alternate
Army of
ending
Darkness?
to... Exactly, Army of Darkness.
Oh man, it's been so long since I saw that. I'm surprised I even remember that reference. It's weird too. I don't like Evil Dead. I tried watching it, I just could not get into it. Oh, but I love Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
It's such a hilarious cheese fest of a movie that I can't not like it.
It's like Evil Dead's a horror movie, Army of Darkness is like an action camp comedy movie.
Well, there's Bruce Campbell in it, so...
Evil Dead just doesn't click with me at all. It's too badly aged to be an effective horror movie for me, but it's also too obviously trying to be a horror movie to be campy and amusing to me. There are certain scenes of it that are memorable that stick in my head, but I don't like the movie as a whole anymore. Army of Darkness, however, it knows what it wants to be, it sticks with it, and as a result of that focus, it has aged much better. Weird. It's weird to think about the sequel to the horror movie being a straight-up comedy, though.
Well, Gremlins did that.
I love Gremlins 2. Too many people give that movie shit.
Gremlins 2 is amazing. I don't care what anyone says.
Anyway, Mementos has an element that's similar to one in Persona 4, although it's much more developed here. In Persona 4, if it was raining, you could go to the TV world, and occasionally you'd find a rare sort of monster, a rare sort of shadow that would give you a particular kind of item if you defeated it. So, in Persona 5 here, different weather conditions have an effect on the collective unconscious, and this, in turn, affects the shadows and the item frequency in Mementos. It's pollen season, so people have allergies right now. This results in two things happening to the shadows in Mementos. One, the roaming shadows in the field will sometimes be asleep, which basically means you get a free preemptive strike on them. Two, a lot of the shadows, when you try to talk to them, will ask you for eye drops, white eye drops specifically, which you can buy at, I think, the grocery store or a pharmacy or something. And if you give a shadow an item when it asks for one in this game, which only ever happens in Mementos on certain weather conditions, they will instantly, without complaint, join your party.
Well, as long as we're not having to give them precious stones so we can actually fight Ozma.
The thing about that, though, is that, and I discovered this later in the part because it's the first time I actually tried doing this. If you give them if they ask you for an item, but you're actually trying to get something like money, you actually want to deny them that, because they'll just ignore your request completely and try to join you as a party member, as a persona. Also, yeah, you can talk to Caroline over there to initiate the Velvet Rim Twins Super Boss battle. You don't want to do that this early in the game, though, because you're going to get your ass kicked. Seriously, it's not going to work, even if you get, like, your strongest level persona out of the...
And even if you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, even if you get, like, your highest level persona out of the goddamn compendium, you are not going to beat the twins this early on in the game. You need to be at a higher level to have higher HP yourself, and your party members need to be stronger. So don't bother at this point in the game. Leave it till endgame. It's a super boss for a reason.
I'll say though, I found out recently that it's not quite endgame, because the cutoff to fight Caroline and Justine ends after you defeat Shido. So you have to beat them before Shido, because when you get into the end of Mementos, when you're going to the final part with the Holy Grail and everything, they won't help you. They'll be the healing thing. They'll actually refill your health in Mementos, and then you can't fight them at that point. So you have to do it before Shido.
Yeah. That's something that's to keep in mind. I don't necessarily know if it's before Shido. You might be able to do it after Shido, but before Christmas Eve. But
yeah, it might be that, but either way, just before Christmas Eve.
I plan to do it actually probably around the time that I'm if I can swing it, probably around the time that I'm dealing with Haru's father, maybe.
Also, apparently Slenderman's joined the fray.
What?
The Reaper?
Yeah, the Reaper.
Oh.
Just spent too long in an area, and boom, he shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah, the Reaper has been a mechanic in the Persona games since Persona 3, although Persona 4 handled it in a weird way. Like, when you're revisiting floors on a dungeon, like, sometimes there's, like, a really rare chance of a treasure chest spawning that has the Reaper inside it. And you'll always know when it happens, because the game asks you, like, 3 goddamn times if you're sure you want to open this treasure chest. But yeah, you have to basically find the Reaper in a rare spawning chest in order to fight him in Persona 4, which is why I've never bothered fighting the Reaper in Persona 4. But in 3 and 5, the Reaper will always come chasing after you if you spend too long a time on a single floor of the randomly generated dungeon. It never shows up in the palaces. You don't have to worry about him in the plot dungeons. And you really shouldn't worry about him in Mementos either unless you're trying to make him appear. Because unless you're screwing around, you're probably not going to spend all that much time on a single floor of Mementos. The floors are not big. Like, they are not all that large. You can completely map out a single random Mementos floor in a matter of minutes. It's not going to waste all that much time. The floors never get all that big. I think there are certain weather conditions that happen at times that make the Reaper appear faster, but
Is either it makes him appear faster, or there was a way to exploit him and defeat him really easily with weather. I feel like I've heard that. I haven't looked it up, though.
Oh, there's always a method to completely cheese the Reaper fight.
Okay.
Like, every game seems to have a new way to make the Reaper a complete joke. The first one is the one that I remember, Persona 3 FES and Vanilla, where the Reaper was vulnerable to a status ailment that made any physical attack that hit him knock him down. And because the original Persona 3 battle system forced you to waste a turn getting up if you were knocked down, you could catch the Reaper in a loop that caused him to just not be able to attack you at all.
Hell yeah.
One of the things that's always true of the Reaper, though, and you should know this before fighting him, because if you trip over it, he's going to demolish you. The Reaper is pretty determined to attack weaknesses whenever it can. But if you try to cast a spell like Makarakarn on your characters, the spell that reflects magic back on the attacker, if you dare to use that spell, the Reaper just gives up on casting elemental spells completely and spams almighty magic at you, which you can't reflect.
Oh, good.
So that's a good way to make the Reaper even harder than he already was.
Yeah, let's make the deadly Wander boss harder.
Meggy Dolan's spells are pretty balanced as far as you using them on enemies. I mean, it's the equivalent of casting the Ultima spell. It hits everything, it does a lot of damage, but the MP cost is really high. But when something like the Reaper uses it, it's borderline broken, because the damage output is high, it hits everything, nothing can ever resist it, and the boss monsters never run out of SP, because their SP count is just so damn high. So, yeah, you don't want to provoke the Reaper into using almighty magic. One of the effects that I really like in Mementos is this wind tunnel. And it's only like at the staircases that it happens, but I really like that effect. It gives the area creepiness that I appreciate. And it shows up in battles too.
That's one thing I really like about Mementos that we're probably not going to be showing off too much because you're going to jump cut to the shadows, is that there's a lot of unique two-line dialogue exchanges between all of your party members when you're just driving around. Like, if you're not opening doors, if you're not ambushing enemies, the characters will start talking after a while, but they're not going to talk about the plot. They're just going to be talking about these random things that pop into their head, and there's, like, a ton of YouTube videos where you can watch just an hour or so worth of this dialogue, where just all of these exchanges that they can have going down the track. And it's some of the most funny, well-written dialogue that I wish was not as rare and like more people saw during their playthroughs.
It's almost like it's almost got that quality that the Eggman announcements in Sonic Colors did, where you could just sit there and listen to it, and it goes on. And it's all voiced, too. It's not just text bubbles that pop up in the corner of the screen.
Yeah.
You know, they voiced all those lines.
It reminds me so much of, like, BioWare games, where, like, they'll be walking somewhere, and then two of your party members will just have a conversation, an exchange that most players might miss out on, because maybe they don't bring that party, maybe they don't they don't wait for conversations to finish, because they'll just go and finish what they're doing. But, like, it adds a lot of fun little details when you have all of these conversations that the Phantom Thieves can have that are really good.
It makes the party itself feel more alive when they're interacting with each other that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same effect. Well, now that you brought up Bioware, it's kind of the same effect that the way the NPCs and teammates in Mass Effect 3 would roam around the Normandy at certain points in the game and have little conversations with each other between missions, as opposed to sitting in their own little rooms like they did in Mass Effect 2. But the thing about the party banter in Mementos is that you don't actually have to worry about what party members you have with you, because they're all in the van.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what your battle party is. The dialogue will just be triggered at random between the party members that you recruited at that point in the game.
Yep. And this is everybody in the party, so when Goro Akechi joins, feel free to spend some time in Mementos with Akechi. You'll get a lot of fun dialogue with him, too.
Yeah, that's the only thing you'll probably miss out a lot on, is Akechi's dialogue, because, well, he's only there for a month. He's kind of the Shinji the Shinjiro of the group. In
Yeah.
that, he's a very temporary party member.
Your eardrums are gonna pop if you make too loud a noise.
I get the feeling Akechi will be in Persona Q too.
Yeah, it's like one of the only positive notes that I have about Persona Q is that it gave Shinjiro some screen time. And he was a bit one note, like every character was one note, but Shinjiro got so little screen time in the original Persona 3 that him having more screen time is itself as a plus, even if it's not high quality screen time,
Yeah.
And there's I could argue that his social link in Persona 3 Portable is a lot more worthwhile than anything that happens with him in Persona Q. But still, he gets some screen time, which is something he was sorely lacking, and that makes it worthy of a freaking award or something. All right, and here we are.
Let's get the bully.
First, gotta change clothes.
One of the things I will say for the Seven Sisters High costume in particular is that the Persona 2 battle theme, the Persona 2 Innocent Sin battle theme specifically, is the one that they use. The Persona 2 battle theme goes really well with Persona 5's gameplay. In fact, it makes me want to see a remake of Persona 2 in the Persona 5 engine with that snappiness to it and everything. I think that would be really great, but
Persona's like Final Fantasy, where like the better these games get, the more you want the older games to get remade.
Yeah, well, it's especially true in the cases of Persona 1 and 2, though, because those games have aged so badly. I mean, you can go back to Final Fantasy 5 or 4, and even though it's an old-timey sprite style, the game itself hasn't aged that badly.
Yeah. Even Final Fantasy 1 on the PlayStation or the PSP, I think Final Fantasy 1 still holds up really well.
Yeah, well, less so on the NES, but, it doesn't have to be remade in state-of-the-art style for it to work. Just a little touch-up was all those games needed. Persona 1 and Persona 2, on the other hand, have so much old-school jank inherent in their look and feel that it is so hard to go back to them in the year 2017.
To be fair, that's a lot of games from the PlayStation 1, very early PS2 era.
Yeah, but I don't have that problem with Xenogears. I don't even have that problem with something like Wild Arms 2, which has not aged the best, but has aged better. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
And Persona 1 not only has the first-person labyrinth design, which is not my favorite, but the actual sprite style is not great. Like, the animations are so stiff and limited.
It's Atlas's mascot.
Yeah, Jack Frost. I don't believe we've actually seen Jack Frost outside this boss, so it's nice to see him here. One of the fun things about Jack Frost, though, is that in universe he exists as a mascot character. So, I don't think it's ever confirmed, but my headcanon is that the Jack Frost mascot in the Persona version of Japan is just so popular that it appears in the collective unconscious as a demon/persona.
I like the fact that in Shin Megami Tensei / Fire Emblem, there is a Jack Frost convenience store where you can get Jack Frost slushies.
That reminds me, like, this is a very recent thing too, but on the roleplay forum I was talking about, like, one of my characters is talking to someone else's character in a Jack Frost ice cream shop.
And by Shin Megami Tensei Fire Emblem, I mean Tokyo Mirage Sessions, but yeah.
Yeah. I still need to play that game. But, the fun thing, like, I think the first Atlas game to have ever been released here, the first Shin Megami Tensei game at least, was that Virtual Boy Jack Brothers game. Where it's like Jack Frost, Pyro Jack, and some other Jack. So,
all in glorious red and black.
I just remember my first Atlas game was Snowboard Kids.
Yeah, but I think it's like the first Atlas game, or the first Shin Megami Tensei game that was localized in the West, was that goddamn top-down Virtual Boy game, starring the Jack characters. So, yeah. That's a weird place for this company to start, I will say.
This whole company is weird.
Oh, man.
Oh, you missed.
Come on, Joker!
It is interesting how many, like, obscure Japanese games are starting to get some love in the West now because the market is just more flexible than it used to be. I mean, you can sing the praises of physical games all you like, but the fact that we have Steam and digital-only games as a publishing option means that we're getting games that we otherwise would not have gotten.
Well, it's basically the only reason we're getting visual novels at all.
Yeah, visual novels is a genre that's getting more exposure here more recently. But other things like, game developers don't want to invest in mass producing any kind of physical copies of games if they don't think they'll sell well, or else they'll get really limited physical releases that basically amount to not being able to get a hold of them at all for a lot of players. Because we can get stuff like digital-only games now, we can play games that were released a year or two ago that they didn't want to localize at first because they didn't think they were viable, but like now maybe the franchise is doing better. And they want to start releasing older games in the interim between now and the next main entry. The Yakuza series and Fatal Frame 5 are good examples. Like, now we're getting basically every Yakuza game, but initially it was a slow burn on those games releasing over here. And Yakuza 5 wasn't released until some years after it initially came out.
Yeah, because I've played the original Yakuza when it came out. Like, it was one of the PS2 games I rented from the store, and it had English voice acting.
Oh, yeah.
I think Michael Madsen was in it.
Yeah, and I think Majima was played by Mark Hamill.
Yeah. And I just remember the load times kind of killed that experience. It might have been an enjoyable game, but I just hated how much it loaded going from any kind of area. I only played it for like a day, keep in mind. I never finished it.
I really, really wish they'd release the HD collection of the first two Yakuza games over here. Like, for some reason they haven't done that yet. And I know we're getting the Yakuza 1 remake soon, but... Or maybe that's already out, I don't know. Yakuza Kiwami, but that still leaves Yakuza 2. And there's definitely an argument for playing the original Yakuza over the remake. I mean, it's not... Yakuza Kiwami, from what I understand, is not so much a definitive Yakuza 1 experience as an alternate way to experience that part of the story. Like, there are ups and downs to both versions, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those remakes, so... It's kind of like, in that sense, it's kind of like... If I were to compare Yakuza Kiwami to anything, it would probably be Wild Arms Alter Code F. I realize half the audience probably doesn't play enough Wild Arms to know what I'm talking about, but... Wild Arms Alter Code F was a remake of the first Wild Arms that was made using the Wild Arms 3 engine, and Yakuza Kiwami is probably closer in overall design to the original, but the result for the Wild Arms remake was that it was design-wise a completely different game than the original Wild Arms, so you probably still want to go back and play the original Wild Arms just to experience the original combat design and the original dungeon layouts and all of that stuff. Because there are two completely different games as far as that goes. They just happen to tell the same story. Well, side quest done. Jack Frost exterminated.
Back to our wacky outfits.
Take that, mascot character.
And now, I'm going to show off the Catherine costumes, which work surprisingly well.
Well, Kazan basically looks exactly like Catherine.
Yeah. The one thing I'm not so big a fan of is the battle theme and victory music that come alongside the Catherine battle music. I don't really feel like the battle theme that comes with the Catherine soundtrack is with a Catherine costume is all that great for a battle theme.
It also doesn't help that main character Kun here looks exactly like a younger Vincent.
Well, that actually does help because it makes the costume work as well as it can. And you know,
Persona 5 is a prequel to Catherine.
and you know, Ryuji gets to be Fedora guy or Trilby guy because he happens to have the same hair color, so it makes sense.
You're so gorgeous, Panther. Okay, guys.
Woo! That went well.
Oh, more people. Just speaking on your thing about the music, I think that's just more of a thing for Catherine in general. I can't remember much music from that game.
Well, most of the music in Catherine is just classical music, possibly remixed, but it's all stuff like...
I was watching you guys' BrainScratch Crash Bandicoot 2 playthrough, and I was watching that Japanese commercial for Crash Bandicoot, and it was using classical music in that trailer, and I was just thinking about the final boss in Catherine. It's funny you bring that up.
Oh, what, you mean the Insane Trilogy playthrough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You showed a Japanese commercial for Crash 2 at the end of the part 1.
Oh, right, the nurse who sees the marks on Crash and gets all dramatic about it.
And the classical music that was playing is exactly the final boss where you're running away from, I don't want to know if I can spoil it, but you're running away from the bad guy, and you're climbing the tower, and da-dun-da-da, da-dun-da-da, dun-da-da-da, ba-dum-ba-da.
Wow, you just summed up every boss in that game. That's impressive.
I just remember the song.
By the way, viewers, for those of you who weren't around to see it, we did a Catherine playthrough on this channel ages ago. Maybe you should go check that out when you have the time.
When did Catherine come out anyway? Was it 2009, 2011?
It's PlayStation 3, so...
I can't even remember.
I will say that since I'm playing on a 1080p monitor, Persona 4 has kind of spoiled the graphics of Catherine for me, because, you know, it's PlayStation 3, and like many PlayStation 3 games, it only plays at a maximum resolution of 720. So it's kind of blurry on my screen now, which is unfortunate because Catherine otherwise looks quite good.
We've been spotted. Let's deal with them before more arrive.
Now, quick trick. If you're close enough to the staircase to do this, you can just sort of get out of the car to reset enemy positions and make them forget you were there.
I do find the car a little bit awkward when it comes to sneaking up on enemies, because like you have to position the camera in such a way they don't sidle up to walls like when you're not in the car, so it can be a little bit tricky sneaking up on guys in Mementos.
It's almost like you're driving a car in a subway.
Yeah, there are two things that make preemptive strikes harder in Mementos than they are in the Palaces. One is that you don't have the cover system, and the other is that you don't have the alert system. You're never at 0%, which means you can't launch preemptive strikes from any direction. It has to be from behind. So, it's a bit more of a production lining yourself up for a preemptive strike than it used to be. The only reason I left this battle in instead of cutting it out is because, well, it ended so goddamn quickly. This also gave me a chance to show off the new area of effect skills that my characters are starting to learn, because this is the point in the game where they start hitting that level where your characters gain AoE skills.
Always useful things to have.
I think the SP requirements on area of effect skills have been rebalanced since Persona 4, in the sense that it's not necessarily more economical to use 2 Agi skills over a single Miragi skill anymore. I'm not sure. I missed the SP count, so I might be thinking of that wrong. But in Persona 3 and 4, it was always a good idea to only ever use the area of effect skills if there were more than 3 enemies that there were more than 2 enemies that you wanted to attack. Like, if there were just 2 enemies, it was still, like, it would still be a bit cheaper to just use 2 single target skills instead of a single area of effect skill. But casting a single target skill 3 times would still cost a bit more spirit points.
Okay.
What a holy defeat.
The hallelujah thing does not work as a victory theme, I'm sorry. The battle theme and victory theme changing when you change costumes kind of reminds me of Lightning Returns, though. Because, you know, as a joke, they gave you the, as a DLC joke, a joke DLC item, they gave you Cloud Strife's Final Fantasy VII costume for Lightning. So the circle completed itself, and you could actually be Miss Cloud in Lightning Returns. So, but when you use that costume in Lightning Returns, I think like the victory theme would change to the Final Fantasy VII one, and Lightning would do the sword twirl as her victory animation.
Of course, you got it.
Yeah, which was a nice little touch. I like that.
Come on, man.
It was the only time I think that Lightning Returns actually did something like that.
I know there were other costumes, I just don't know if they actually did that. Well, I mean, like, I think she could dress up as Yuna.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. She did have a...
I don't know if Yuna had the 10 victory theme or if she had a special animation or anything.
I'm not sure if the victory theme changed for the other costumes, but yeah, now that you're mentioning it, there were other costumes based on other games. I haven't played Lightning Returns in ages because I don't care enough about the story to want to like.
I don't care enough about the gameplay, so.
Well, I like the gameplay, the battle theme, the battle system that they went with for Lightning Returns is pretty damn engaging. It's everything else in the game that makes it a bit of a special case for me, where I need to be in a certain kind of mood to really get into it, you know. The Majora's Mask time travel or day-to-day system never really meshed with me, and the knowledge that I'll have to play through this game multiple times to get everything done really just puts me off trying to complete it. But I did play a fair chunk of it, enough to get at least one of the main 4 bosses done, and I had a good enough time with it. It's just, you know, I really have to be in a certain kind of mood to want to play that kind of game, so it's sitting on my shelf waiting for me to be in that mood. Kind of like Majora's Mask, actually. I need to be in a certain mood for that kind of game, for that kind of game in general. I find myself more drawn to games that have a straightforward progression.
Let's go.
And yeah, rest areas that appear in between levels have conversations that you can indulge in the same way as the
Safe rooms.
as the safe rooms in the palaces. However, they aren't all unique. I'm sorry to say, you do not get a new conversation for every single rest area. I think like once you get to the later areas of Mementos.
God damn those pants.
once you get to the later areas of Mementos where there's more than one rest area per section, I think it will always be the same conversation in that section. Anyway, this school uniform is the school uniform from Shin Megami Tensei If, which I'm surprised they put in as a DLC, because like fucking no one in the West knows Shin Megami Tensei If. I don't think it was even released over here. Like the only reason anyone knows Shin Megami Tensei If here is because the female protagonist appeared in Personas 1 and 2 as an NPC, which makes for an interesting bit of a talking point, especially for people who like to theorize about the labyrinthian Shin Megami Tensei timeline, which rivals the Zelda timeline for confusing multi-universal bullshit.
All these games are connected?
Oh, there's this theory about the Amala network and how it connects all the different timelines and universes of Shin Megami Tensei. But the overall fan timeline is very similar to the Zelda one, where it sort of splits off at points and becomes different timelines in different universes that follow different games. And I believe the Persona series, as far as timelines go, like the closest canon explanation for where it fits in the general mythos is that it's in the same timeline as the Devil Summoner games with Raito Kuzunoha and Shin Megami Tensei If. I think that's how it goes. It's hard to tell. Shin Megami Tensei has a lot of series and sub-series that all sort of fall apart into each other, and once you account for the fact that the mainline Shin Megami Tensei games usually have multiple endings too. Jesus.
But which one's the dog ending?
What?
Silent Hill joke.
Okay. I don't get it. But I haven't played much Silent Hill, so...
Oh, you haven't seen the dog endings?
That's amazing.
No, I haven't.
Just look up videos for it. Just search up from Silent Hill 2, 3, and I think there's 1 and 4 as well. Just search the dog endings.
I'll do that after I play the games. I kind of want to be able to go into the Silent Hill games at least partially blind, because
I wonder if you'll be able to stumble into any of the dog or UFO endings.
Yeah, it's just more effective to play a horror game without knowing what's ahead.
Most Silent Hills prevent you from getting the joke endings on the first playthrough, unless it's Silent Hill Homecoming, where you can get the UFO ending on your first try.
I'm sure that confused at least some people.
Oh yeah. Imagine go through that whole game and then UFOs just show up and ruin the ending. It's like, well, what the what kind of ending was that?
Oh, man. Silent Hill is an interesting series, and I really do need to play my copy of Silent Hill 1 one of these days.
Oh, you actually have Silent Hill 1.
Yeah, on PSN.
Okay.
I bought it ages ago, along with Parasite Eve and various other games from the PS1 era that I've always known that I want to play, but just haven't gotten around to on my backlog yet.
Parasite Eve is a weird thing.
I like Parasite Eve a lot, though.
Parasite Eve is great. It's like that kind of experimental game that's a genre hybrid that you never see anyone but indie developers even trying anymore.
Yeah.
It's Resident Evil meets Final Fantasy.
And it somehow worked but didn't quite work.
Parasite Eve 2 is more Resident Evil meets Final Fantasy. Parasite Eve 1 is weird in that Yeah, it has the pre-rendered backgrounds, but instead of being like Resident Evil, it's more like Final Fantasy VII. Like, all of the camera perspectives are super pulled back and very generic camera angles that are more like top-down perspectives.
Yeah. The thing I like about Parasite Eve is that you can keep New Game Plussing it, and, like, you can keep all your inventory, you can keep all the weapons to every single New Game Plus. And the way the customization system is, you can just keep making a gun better and better and better and better, and just keep configuring with it until it's like a god weapon.
Yeah. Parasite Eve 2 is definitely where it's at, though. That game has aged better than a lot of games in the PS1 era have. Like, visually, it's still quite nice. And some of the graphical tricks they used, like the FMV that scrolls along with your character movement so that it looks like a 3D background while you're moving through it, is genuinely quite stunning. Like, even today.
I haven't played the Third Birthday, but I heard that wasn't very good.
Neither have I.
Third Birthday is more of a third-person shooter kind of game, where the camera is free-moving and behind the character, and you're actually aiming and shooting. Or at least I think you're aiming and shooting. It might be lock-on. It was a PSP game, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just know it because it is Aya Bria, the main character from the first two games. It's technically the Parasite Eve universe.
Yeah.
I just heard I always heard from people it was a bad game, so I never gave it a shot.
It's not bad, from what I hear. It's more like in the okay range. I get the feeling a lot of people... well, it's one of those cases where a game is just okay, but it's kind of disappointing, so people call it bad, is my understanding of it. I haven't played it personally because it's a PSP game. I haven't played many of the worthwhile games on the PSP. I haven't played simply because, like, I didn't know about them. Because nobody knows what's good on the PSP. Because there's so little that was good on the PSP that was worth talking about. That,
Well, there's Powered Up. Or Mega Man.
well, yeah, but that's Mega Man. That's like a get-out-of-jail-free card.
I don't know. There have been some plenty bad Mega Man games.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's like one of those franchises where you know about it. Like, don't even pretend you didn't know about it. You heard about it at some point, damn it. But, oh yeah, Shin Megami Tensei 4. The ironic part about this is that, like, because of Shin Megami Tensei 4's graphical direction, like, the costumes in this game look loads better than anything you'll ever see in the game itself. So, yeah. Like, the samurai have a pretty damn cool, like, blue trenchcoat uniform thing going on, but you never get to see it in battle in Shin Megami Tensei 4 because it's like one of those Dragon Quest-ish. You have a stat window, and you have monster sprites, and yeah.
Well, soon Shin Megami Tensei games will be on the Switch, and only the Switch, unless they do keep making for the 3DS 4 years from now.
I don't think so with the announcement of the Switch game a half a year ago at this point, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, mainline Shin Megami Tensei is typically Nintendo exclusive, while Persona is Sony exclusive. And, well, Atlas has a big old pocket full of lint for the Microsoft consoles, apparently.
Well, Japanese company on an Xbox equals why bother?
Yeah, I know. And, hey, they tried, like, during the Xbox 360 era, they tried to get some RPGs on the 360. It didn't work.
Blue Dragon, anyone?
Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, which is great, by the way.
I've been meaning to play that for a long time.
Yeah. There was also, what was it? What was it called? Infinite. No, Square.
Oh.
Infinite.
I know what you're talking about. Shit.
Infinite on Discovery. Was that the name?
Sounds right.
Yeah. Like I was at like one of the game stalls at Too Many Games, and like I just found like every single Xbox 360 RPG that was unloved and unbought by people. I was like, oh, if I only still had money, I'd buy all of these right here, because they were all so cheap, man. Because nobody bought them. So you can find them everywhere for like $5 to $10 a piece. And it's a really good value now because they are, for the most part, they're genuinely good JRPGs. So you're getting like 60-hour games for $5.
Problem is, they're on the 360, and we all know how well that does in Japan.
Yeah. They were trying to push for, JRPG content on their console so that it would do better in Japan. But it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, because Microsoft doesn't do well in Japan, and since Sony was getting all the JRPGs anyway, most of them didn't feel any need to buy a 360.
Yeah. And I mean, like, they're exclusives, too. Like, if I were to point to something genuinely compelling that the 360 had as an exclusive, it would not be Halo, it would actually be the JRPGs, but, well, it didn't do well in Japan, in spite of all that, and over here in
most of the people who bought 360s are people playing first-person shooters who aren't interested in JRPGs.
Yeah, or people playing Western RPGs that have a stick up their ass about JRPGs, which is, in a way, even worse.
Mm-hmm.
I remember liking Enchanted Arms for the Xbox 360. It was a really early 360 game. It was like I think it was 2006 or 2007, but it had a really good battle system. Plot hasn't aged very well, but the character models and stuff haven't aged very well, but I thought the battle system was fun at the time. I haven't played it in like 8-9 years, though.
Yeah. The thing about the JRPG genre is that no matter who you are, there are probably like 60 games in the genre that you haven't played yet. Like, I've got
I don't have time for all these games.
Yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 JRPGs on the GameCube that I still need to get around to playing. 2
Which
or 3
ones?
on the 360. Which ones? Oh, everything. Baten Kaitos. There's I've got my stack of games over here. Baten Kaitos. What's that? Higher up on the stack. Thousand Year Door, which I've played a fair bit of, but not all the way through. Pushing up into the Wii, I've got Last Story, which I've owned for ages and haven't played yet. Wow.
You also need to play Path of Radiance, which I know technically isn't the same as a JRPG, but...
Yeah, but I don't own Path of Radiance. I do own Radiant Dawn, but I want to play Path of Radiance before Radiant Dawn.
God damn it, you have Radiant Dawn, but I have Path of Radiance, and I have Path of Radiance, but I don't have Radiant Dawn.
I have so many Tales of games in my backlogs, some of which I started, but then I just sort of gave up on and didn't finish, like Tales of the Abyss, Tales of Legendia, Tales of Vesperia. There are so many Tales games I started, and I never finished them. I don't know what it is about the Tales series. I can't finish these games.
Yeah, I have the same problem. Well, sort of. Like, there's only one that I've gotten that far in. It's Exilia. Exilia 1, specifically, I should say, because there is a sequel to that. I played like 2/3 of the way through, and I sort of got sidetracked by the time I got that far. It's a long game. I have Tales of Symphonia on Steam, which I hear is not the best version of the game, and I've got Tales of Graces F on the PS3, which I want to play, but it starts off with, that very anime trope of, the oblivious, upbeat shonen hero who has that female best friend who's got the hots for him, and he's totally
every Tales game?
Well, yeah, every Tales game has that. Like, Tales of Exilia has that, but you don't find out about it until halfway through the game, and by that point you're too invested to be put off by the cliche. Because that character isn't introduced until Mila gets stuck in a wheelchair and you have to take her back to Judith's hometown, which is like way into the game. So yeah. Ugh.
You can take on Caroline just for fun? Just to see how badly you get whooped?
Nah, not yet. Anyway, I'm just walking into the Velvet Room in order to register my personas in the compendium. So, never mind that. Nothing of value to see there. Now, sometimes we manage to keep talking through the only extended Mementos part that we're ever going to do.
Hooray!
That's Mementos.
wiping the sweat off my brow here. That was something that I was expecting to get to stop talking halfway through and just have to put up with a lot of those awkward silence moments where we started to wonder what to say next.
That's why we go on tangents, Lewis.
BrainScratch commentaries. Occasionally we talk about what we're watching. Only occasionally, though. I like how this is like 1-day shipping. What?
Pick it up, Amazon Prime.
It's like that lucky Amazon shipment that just happens to ship from a warehouse that's like the next state over, so it shows up a day later no matter what shipping option you pick.
That like never happens to me. Even if it's like at my closest postal office, if it's technically early, they will hold on to it until the day it's supposed to arrive.
That's annoying. It's probably just something to do with Georgia's post offices, though, because that never happens to me in New Jersey.
That happens to me like all the time whenever I order something from that I know comes from somewhere nearest by or can't get from somewhere nearest by. It's like, at that point, I just wonder why I even bother.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Because trust me, I look on the shipping and it says, like, 2 days earlier, it's at the post office that's like 5 minutes from my house. Nope, we're not going to deliver it to you.
I guess some post offices do that to encourage you to pay for the extra shipping, but it's Amazon Prime, so why bother? I'm already paying extra.